Let's now switch gears and get to our topic of the hour. We want to talk about decongesting Nairobi and the bus rapid transit system as well. And as I had mentioned earlier, joining me in studio we have Constant Cap, who is an executive director, Kilimani Project Foundation. And next to me here is Mark Ojal, who's an urban designer. We want to get into this topic at the moment and we want to give you a background and some definitions as well. Let's start by defining what the bus rapid transit is. This is according to the African City Planner. I like this definition of all of them. BRT is a system that provides for buses to have their own segregated ways within cities. The segregated ways prevents the buses from being caught in traffic, unlike single-user private cars, thereby enabling them to adhere to fixed routes and schedules. Let's look at a bit of history in terms of BRT facts and figures. Africa's first BRT system was inaugurated in Lagos, Nigeria in 2008. Of course, this might be disputed. And Africa currently counts about 7 BRT systems. Let's take a look at some countries that have invested in this bus rapid transit. Morocco, Ghana, 2016. Everyone knows about Dar es Salaam. They inaugurated their system in May 2016 as well. And Kenya was supposed to actually start working on its own around that particular time. Now, the proposal for Nairobi is that the CBD bus rapid lanes will be placed on Haile Selassie, Moi Avenue, Kenyatta Avenue, or University Way. While outside the CBD, we have already seen activity on the Thika Superhighway. We are also told Mombasa Road should be happening shortly, Jogoo Road, and Outer Ring Road as well. Let me come to the discussion in studio. We do have some pictures, of course, of the bus rapid transit setup both in Tanzania and in Colombia. And we've picked Colombia because that's where Kenyan authorities said they went to benchmark, because they said Tanzania has been having some teething challenges in terms of payment, whereas in more developed countries you can pay at the station before you get onto the BRT. In Tanzania, I believe you pay when you're within the system, so that has caused a bit of a challenge as well. So we should be seeing some images. This is, of course, footage provided by the World Bank, a project they have invested in. This was the Tanzania before, but shortly you'll be seeing what sort of changes have taken place once that system has come into play. There we go. So that's a little bit about what those buses look like, what commuters in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania are enjoying at this moment. Let me start with you, Constant. Talk to me about what are the determining factors for a mass rapid transit system in a city. What should make authorities in Kenya say that Nairobi is ready for this particular kind of system?
There are several things you look at when it comes to urban mobility and urban transport. One of the things that's critical is the number of people moving from various points of origin to destination. One of the things you have in cities is that cities develop in different ways. We have a city like Nairobi, for instance, converges at the CBD. So we have more what you call a radial structure.
Okay.
So everything comes towards the CBD and everything moves out of the CBD. So based on those particular channels that bring you to the CBD, you look at the statistics on each channel, number of people moving, say, from one point of Thika Road or along Thika Road to the end, along Jogoo Road to the CBD. And based on that, those factors, then you sit down and come up with what we call an alternative analysis. So an alternative analysis takes the channel and says that these are the numbers at the moment, this is our projected numbers for the next, say, 20 years, and this is these are the best alternatives. So for some places, it may be just maintain a normal ordinary bus, like a place that has maybe less than 2,000 people per direction per hour. You know, other places where you're talking of maybe 20,000 people, you may be now talking about things like light rail transit or metro rail transit based on those particular numbers. And then after you've done that alternative analysis, then you go into what we call a feasibility study, where you study the particular project, look at of course now the cost benefit analysis of the project and everything, and then after that comes application. Application. So coupled with the factors of people moving along those channels, another important thing that has to be looked at, which tends to be overseen, is land use management of the area. So in some places you may have very dense land use management, which will mean lots of stops, for instance, along the route, which may now have a bit of a determining factor as to what particular means you're using. Or it may be large-scale land use within the area. So those also tend to be factors that you look at as you're doing your transportation planning.
Okay, and of course we want our viewers to get involved in this discussion. Do you think the bus rapid transit will solve Nairobi's congestion problem? Let us know your thoughts. And do you understand, of course, how the system will work? There were a lot of questions when people saw the segregation of one lane on Thika Road. A lot of people were asking, how is this going to happen? Is it on the right side, etc.? Send us your questions, your comments. 2242 is our SMS line. And on social media, use the hashtag CitizenExtra as well. And I'll be able to read some of your tweets and your SMSs as well. Mark, let me come to you. Let me also give you a chance to weigh in on this discussion.
Yeah.
But take the discussion further and tell us, in terms of what you're seeing being done by the Ministry of Transport, NAMATA, that's the National Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, KENHA as well, are we moving in the right direction? Finally, can we say that there is light at the end of what has been a very congested tunnel that is our traffic issue in Nairobi?
I would say yes and no. Yes, because at least we have something happening, and no, in the sense that we may not get it right. There's a 50 and 50 chance. If you look at the basics of BRT, which I think are the most crucial at this point, there has to be off-board fare collections, as you talked about.
Okay.
Dedicated rights of way, which is what is being implemented at the moment. We have bus alignment, could be either in the middle or on cab lines. And then we also have intersection treatments. Basically, they have to be like the bus rapid transit has to have the right of way, at intersections. And we also have platform boarding. This means that people coming from vehicles, passengers, could actually board and drop off at grade level.
Okay, without having to climb up or step down.
Yes.
Okay.
And what you're seeing being implemented at the moment is what we would call priority bus lanes. Now that does not necessarily mean it is BRT. I mean, there are standards of BRT. So that is why I'm saying there's a 50% chance of it succeeding and 50% chance of it failing.
Okay.
Yes.
So is this a BRT? What they are proposing, is it a BRT? I know we've written demystifying the BRT on our ident, but there's been a discussion of whether this is a BRT or just a prioritized bus lane. Any of you can answer this one.
Maybe I could go first. In my opinion, it is not.
It's not.
It fails to meet the basic criteria.
And part of what you've explained.
Yes.
Constant?
So, yeah.
I look at it as a busway. I'll call it a busway. I wouldn't call it a bus rapid transit in all the sense as far as best practice is concerned. It's an attempt at a busway that can be upgraded if done well towards achieving being a fully functional BRT.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it seems to be done in a very haphazard manner. One of the key things that comes with any urban transportation plan is that you have to have a very thorough communication plan. You have to have a very thorough communication strategy, and this has to come right from how you're going to communicate to all stakeholders, to the users, the passengers, who are actually the most important stakeholders, to other public authorities like the police,
to the media.
To the media. Well. In fact, the media form a very critical role there.
And I say this because we've been trying to get their representatives here since last week and have been unable to. Yes?
Precisely.
Yes.
It's very important to users, to bus drivers, the people who are going to be working in that particular sector, to people who live around the area. What are they going to do? We have to have a thorough, communication plan that may actually take months to educate people. It's surprising that last week, we just suddenly saw on social media that the ministry has segregated some bus lanes. As urban professionals, of course, we were happy because we've known about the plans that NAMATA have had. We've known about the Simba route. They've named them after animals. The Simba route that follows Thika Road to, I think, Langata Road. There's Ndovu, Wayakiwe, Mombasa Road, Chui Showground to Jogoo Road. They actually, it's something that has been there, but it's not been out in the limelight. It's not been communicated. It's not been told to people. Now, when
it's like it had been put aside in 2016 because there was a proposal. Then it's like Transport CS James Macharia said it's not possible in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Yes.
At the time when they were launching Ngong Road, those were his words, that BRT is not possible in Nairobi because there is no space, which was quite an unfortunate statement, because it's clear that he had not really studied how BRT systems happen. But that has to happen, and when you don't get that, you put yourself under the possibility of getting into serious problems, because you don't have the goodwill of the people. And the people are the critical factors in urban centers, because they're the users, they're the people who will either make the system for you or break it. You know, we've seen similar things happening in Nairobi as far as transportation, where nice plans are unveiled, but they're not communicated that well to the general population.
So there is a challenge there.
Yeah.
Mark, let me come to you, and we'll talk about where BRT has worked and where it's failed, and what sort of lessons Nairobi can learn from all this. But what do you think it will take to encourage people to shift from private cars to public transport? Because I'm looking at Thika Road. If you really want to decongest Thika Road, you have to convince ordinary users to leave their car or cars at home. What's that going to take, considering you know how Nairobians really cling on to their vehicles, and you can almost find 10 cars with one person each on a road at a particular moment?
I mean, the big question here is more of a behavior change. It is not just provision of infrastructure, as we are seeing, and that is a big challenge. Or how to change the engineer's perspective of solution finding, or what would be the solution to this. The key thing again is investing in comfortability. Comfort is a key, yes, and of course convenience. And the sense that I should be able to say, I can come from Westlands to town in 5 minutes. Then I can promise someone I'm meeting you in 10 minutes. You know, that has to be guaranteed. The other thing is security and safety, especially for women and girls. They have to feel like I'm going to be safe in this system. Many people I talk to say, one lady I talked to actually mentioned that I would never use public transport. Never? Yes.
Under any circumstances?
Yeah.
Because?
And the key question, the key determinant for this was that matatus are noisy, and people are arrogant, the people there. So again, it depends on how you retrain the operators of this.
Okay.
To invite people. The key here is inviting people to come out of their cars. And of course, I mean, if you look at Bogota that you mentioned.
Yes, Colombia.
The then mayor, Enrique Peñalosa, who is again the mayor at the moment, said that they were inviting people from their cars to use public transport. And of course, maybe Constant did mention this earlier, it's also the question of last mile connectivity.
Once the bus drops me wherever, it's last stop.
Yes.
How will I get to my final destination?
Exactly. So there has to be that connection. And of course, you know, let's say I leave my workplace at 10 p.m. I should be able to be sure that I'm safe to the bus stop and home. So how do I connect with these systems? And the other thing that I think Constant did mention earlier was land use. And let's say we have a bus stop in the middle of nowhere. Of course, people won't use it, and it's raining, you know. So we have to consider nodes. These are more like activity areas within the city.
Quite complicated, quite complex, actually, in terms of the thought process that has to go into it.
Yes, yes. It takes so much consideration. I mean, it's not just something that you wake up and say, okay, we're going to do this.
Is there anything you want to add to that?
I think those are the key factors: last mile connectivity, safety, and efficiency. Those are things that people want. I tend to try not to look at it from the point of view of getting people out of their cars, but at times I prefer looking at it at the point of view of how do we make those who are currently using public transport have a more efficient way of moving around, have a more convenient way of moving about. That is, it's kind of like a paradigm shift from that angle of getting people out of their cars. But first, how can we help these people who are currently using matatus and buses and borders and whatever, and then after that we can consider the people who are using their private cars, because at the moment as it is, all those people who are using public transport still have the ambition to get to use their own cars, apart from a few exceptions maybe. But many people who use public transport will always talk of nikipata gari yangu itakuwa afadhali.
Hizi shida zitaisha.
Exactly.
Yes.
which also explains to you the success of the new taxi services that we've received, you know, over the last few years, Uber, Taxify, and etc. Because that last mile service still helps. Curitiba managed to solve their last mile service by combining what we call transit.
Curitiba in Brazil?
Yeah, in Brazil. Transit-oriented development, where you focus a lot of your urban developments along the main transport channels, and then you have your bus rapid transit along those channels, but you have vehicles that feed into the system. Now there is at much higher level, because those vehicles feed into the system free of charge. So you can imagine someone here at say Demistifying Road will be fed into Ngong Road BRT free of charge, but he gets to pay it once he gets to Ngong Road. So that is a much higher level.
And of course they've had 30 years to implement some of these systems. I want to get your thoughts on the proposal by the ministry. They are saying first 3 months, I don't know from when, they'd like to see at least 50 buses on the road. Then they have an 18-month plan. I don't know, what they're envisioning in terms of that. How many BRTs do you think Nairobi will need, in what locations, for us to feel a marked improvement? For me to feel that I can leave the house at 9 and know that I'll get to work at 9:30 or 10, and I'll have to pass through what was previously a very congested area. In terms of that, things have changed. What needs to happen for us to be able to see that?
One, we need about 100 kilometers of BRT lane
within Nairobi.
Yes.
Okay.
We also need around 4,000 buses for it to be successful.
4,000 buses.
Yes. But we have to also understand that BRT alone is not enough. I mean, we will congest BRT. If, for example, I live in Comoro.
Places, I think in Melbourne, Australia, where they say the BRT system is completely congested.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is a complementary system. I mean, like I did mention earlier, we are talking about an integrated system, where we are talking about a metro system. We are talking about cycling in the city. We are talking about a bit of light rail as well, tram. So if all these come together, then you can actually have a sustainable transport system that works.
Okay.
Otherwise, if we just say, okay, it's all BRT, we will fail.
We will fail. And we'll still be here 2-3 years from now having the same discussion.
Yes.
Constant, I can give you a chance to talk about this, but in addition, moving the discussion forward, one has to already say we are seeing the resistance from Matatu owners, in that as much as they're saying we are on board, it's grudgingly. Yes, we are on board, but we're on board because we are the ones who know how to transport Nairobians. So you can already foresee that there will be some challenges in regards to that. In Tanzania, for example, we know that the minibuses were relegated to the outskirts of the city gradually. Would that make sense for Nairobi even? What do we then do with all the matatus that have previously used those routes? If we want to reduce the number of matatus, because that will then reduce traffic on the other sides of the road that are not segregated.
Yeah, that's an interesting area that has been tackled by different cities in different ways. One of the things that Bogota did when they were setting up their BRT was to get the Matatu owners to be shareholders within the entire BRT system.
Okay.
That is one option. I've heard many people saying that the system should be entirely government owned. I tend to disagree with that. The government could be a good regulator of the system, could be a good monitor of the system, but you don't necessarily have to have it completely government owned. The Matatu owners can come in as shareholders of the particular buses, as people investing in the SACCOs and the SACCOs owning those buses, and then a management company taking care of the particular route. So unfortunately, again, there seems to be a communication breakdown between the Matatu owners and the ministry. Because I think last week on television, one of the Matatu owners was talking about them not being consulted well enough. There is another association Mark and I met, I think 2 months ago, and they said that they were ready to be part of it as bus owners.
The MOA saying issuing different statements.
Yeah, as bus owners. So there has to be definitely we cannot throw them out of the picture, out of the system. They are critical stakeholders in the system. I'd like to say that they are not the most important stakeholder. For me, the most important stakeholder is the passenger, because the passenger is the user of the system.
Okay.
And when you ignore the needs of the passenger, we end up just looking at the we ignore the demand side, what the passenger wants. The passenger wants proper routing. The passenger wants proper timing. The passenger wants proper payment systems. We tend to focus a lot of what we're doing to the supply side and not the demand side. So we need to, when we shift that focus to the supply side, demand side, and then we kind of integrate now the supply side properly, then we can start talking about having better systems. Just as Mark had said earlier on, there's no ultimate solution to urban transportation. That's one thing we've got to realize. And I feel very bad when I see people saying that this is a proposal to make traffic jams a thing of the past. This is a proposal. You know, a city like New York that has had metro rails for decades, just recently started moving a few years ago, started moving now towards having bus lanes, improving their cycle lanes and pedestrian paths. So cities are organic. They're constantly changing. There's constant new methods of transportation coming up. You may not be aware, but one of the fastest growing methods of transportation now is aerial cabin cars. In urban centers. We've had one implemented, actually 2 or 3 implemented in Algeria. We have them in Hong Kong, we have in Singapore, we have a number of European cities that are adopting this. And these aerial gondolas are slowly becoming another means of transporting people, especially where we have intense land use.
We've heard of talk of having them, I think, in Nyeri, Mombasa County have also... There's been a lot of talk. Had discussions around the same.
Yeah, there was a launch, there was actually a launch of the Likoni cable line in December. That happened in December, and now the last I had was Doppelmayr had received a contract for the construction. Doppelmayr, the biggest aerial cable cabin car constructors. We also have to consider them as a possible means of transit within the city. They transport up to 5,000 people per day in one direction per hour. So in areas where we're talking about very intense land use, and we don't need to start reclaiming land for rails or for buses, we can also consider such as other means of transporting. Okay.
Oh, fair enough. Mark, I want you to respond to this text.
Yes.
Hello, citizen. I don't agree with these changes. Our roads are too small for this. I see more traffic jams and a lot of delay. And I want to add to their comment and ask, we can see sort of how this will happen on Thika Road, on Mombasa Road. I'm looking at the Rongai Road.
Yes.
I'm looking at many of these other roads that don't have that are only 1 or 2 lanes actually, so to speak. So how does that work? Because whereas you say those who use Thika Road and Mombasa Road will benefit, what about those who do not have the benefit of a superhighway? How can you then bring relief to them? And we've seen the traffic on, for example, the Ongata Rongai Road. It is legendary.
Yeah.
Yes, and not in a positive way.
I would start by saying design makes everything possible. And the key here is design. There's no question of absence of land. Land is there for expansion of roads. It's about how you expand the road infrastructure. Are you integrating a design that would actually be focused on moving masses, like mass transit? Somebody says that if you design places for cars and traffic, you get cars and traffic. But if you design places for if you design cities for people and cars, people and places, then you get people and places. So the idea here is change the way you design the street space, from looking at how many cars will you be moving per minute to looking at how many people do you want to move per minute. Then design for it. Then of course, for example, Ngong Road. If you look at the road space that Ngong Road has, it's certainly more than 120 meters, I guess. Yeah. So that 120 meters is able to access. Let's talk about 60 meters, for example. Just half of it. You can integrate non-motorized transport, which is cycling and walking. You can integrate bus lanes, the BRT route, and have designated lanes for private cars.
Okay.
All that can actually fit within 60 meters. We've tried it within in Kenyatta Avenue, which is just 60 meters wide.
Okay. Yeah. I want to read a few SMSs to our question and get a brief comment from even as we wrap up this discussion. Nairobi Lord, we asked, do you think the bus rapid transit can solve or at least bring some much needed relief in terms of Nairobi's congestion problem? This is what some of you had to say. At Nairobi Lord says, yes it can, but only if the Matatu menace is curtailed. With Matatu impunity, how will authorities keep these lanes clear Samuel Mugo says, it's very simple to decongest Nairobi. Reduce the number of private cars by making public transport reliable, but as of now, these matatus are just a menace. And the thing is, we're not even asking about matatus in our question, but that's how everyone is responding. Juma Bryan, what the capital city requires is a metro rail system or a subway. BRT will just cause another traffic gridlock. Those billions accounted for at KRA or unaccounted for at KRA would have gone a long way in aiding with such a project. I think he's referring to a report there by the Auditor General. Clinton Inega says probably, but how will they monitor those segregated lanes? Do we have CCTVs on all our major roads in the city? While Krasiva says privatized health, education, water, sewerage, and matatus assume they are public transport instead of shared taxis. We need a proper public funded system. In 1 minute each, let me just get final thoughts from you. Let me start with you, Constant.
The idea of a metro rail sounds nice. It's very good. But we have to remember one thing about metro rails is that they are all government subsidized.
Okay.
Based on our current economic circumstances, I don't think we're in a situation where we can actually subsidize a system like that. And we're talking about a system that costs just at capital level 25 times more than a BRT.
Okay.
And at operations level, more than double that of a BRT.
Okay.
So that's very difficult.